ahead.
We've had 40 years in Prudhoe Bay. We're looking to have 40 more. This seismic project is the first step in that.
Whether it's new technology on the move at Prudhoe Bay or processing fish by hand in Naknek.
How treasured they are by everybody else in the nation.
How new approaches to old challenges might be the best hope for Alaska's economy.
Sometimes people talk about us being like high-tech janitors, and that's kind of what we are.
Coming up, how tomorrow's jobs depend on today's big ideas.
Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief that the best is yet to come. Bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to our program. In this show, we explore the frontiers of big ideas and start off with North America's largest oil field, Prudhoe Bay, where the industry is under constant pressure to squeeze more oil out of an aging field. BP believes the oil is there, but as Dave Goldman shows us, it's just harder to find.
After more than 4 decades here on the North Slope, BP is still committed to oil exploration and recovery, though it's harder than it used to be. The question is, where is the oil?
Everywhere you look is white, though the dominant color is still green. Welcome to Prudhoe Bay, the largest oil field in North America. BP now operates the entire field and is turning to innovation to continue production.
This seismic project is the first step in that, and I think all of us that work at BP would love to see this oil field last for another 40 years. It's vital to the state, it's vital to all the other oil fields in Alaska being, successfully moving oil down taps.
Jennifer Collins is referring to PBS 40, the largest seismic survey of its kind, a technology dedicated to finding that remaining oil.
People in here and people in here.
But locating that oil is as big a task as the space it covers.
Total project area is 450 square miles. We've started on the west side back in January, started working our way across. We're over here obviously to today, and we'll be finished sometime in mid-April.
But why invest in a 40-year-old field? BP says Prudhoe Bay is still a contender. In 2017, it produced more than 280,000 barrels of oil a day, accounting for more than half the state's total production. And from 2015 to 17, it held consistent levels uncommon for an older field. An old field that could soon find new life.
This is a recording device. It's recording data.
Based in Houston, seismic acquisition specialist Robert Poole is a frequent guest here.
Terabytes of data in the data terms, but it's a cube of data that's from the surface to probably 5 miles down.
Above ground, they're making waves.
So this machine behind us is a vibrator. That's about a 90,000 pound vehicle on tracks, so he doesn't do any damage on the tundra. It all stays on the snow.
Scott Dygert looks after field development.
In the center of this machine is a big pad, and that pad presses down with hydraulics and basically puts the weight of that vibrator onto a pad, and then it shakes, it vibrates.
As they send in the sounds, driver Robert Byerly is looking for good vibrations.
That's the source of what we use then to record the sound waves coming back up on the geophones.
It records 24 hours a day, but the vibes sweep at a start time that started when that vibe driver pushes the button. We've got about 16,000 of these on the project, and we have about 130,000 total source locations that we'll occupy over the whole project.
So the end point of all this then would be targets that we can actually drill to try and recover any oil that's being left behind at Prudhoe Bay.
It starts here.
Yes, we're in the doghouse.
Ground control for the Vibe trucks.
It's just always been called the doghouse. I don't know why.
As Patricio, a senior observer, directs traffic.
He has a screen for each vibrator. Each vibrator has a number. He probably knows them so well that he recognizes their voice. When they call in, he knows which screen that guy's on.
But challenges lurk as the company watches for wildlife and tundra.
We have to receive federal authorizations to work in polar bear country, and one of those mitigations from that authorization from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is conducting surveys to identify and avoid known polar bear dens.
Simplifying the inexact science.
And we're looking for fault traps that have not been drilled yet. And they'll create that cube, they'll plot every wellbore, and they'll look for compartments that haven't been produced. And then Scott will go drill them.
As BP aims to keep the field going for 40 more years in this desert on the ice. Reporting for Frontiers, I'm Dave Goldman.
That snow on the North Slope will probably be there for a while. So, are your eyes hungry for aquamarine waters and bright red salmon? Stay right here.
We're all equals here.
Up next, a partnership between two sisters from Montana and Bristol Bay fishermen, how they've teamed up to market Alaska salmon. The greatest job growth in the Alaskan economy has come from small businesses, often developed by entrepreneurs who believe that they have the next best thing. Take the Kvichak Fish Company. In the summer, it operates on the outskirts of Naknek in the shadows of large seafood processors. The companies market salmon-savvy customers who want their fish handled with a personal touch. There is no fishery like it in the world, especially in a good year. When sockeye surge into the millions and push into Bristol Bay over the course of just a few weeks, processors must work on a massive scale to handle as many fish as they can, as fast as they can, to fill freezer vans stacked as high as tall buildings. And yet, there are small custom processing companies which hope to carve out a niche. But instead of a mom-and-pop business, the Kvichak Fish Company is a partnership between two sisters from Montana.
We're all equals here.
For Amanda Walacheski, it's a full-time, year-round job.
When it hits so heavy, it's great if everybody can do every job.
So this is our blast freezer. It's set at minus 35.
For her older sister, Alina Chacon, who teaches grade school in Bozeman, it's part-time work.
This is a rack of fillets that are all done.
But work she loves.
Thank you.
The sisters hire a crew of about a dozen people, mostly family and friends.
We have a constant flow of fish.
Some days it's hard to keep up.
You kind of lose track after a while. You just get in the mode and keep going.
Every single salmon has to be cut and handled by hand.
I'm proud of it. I'm grateful for it. It's so overwhelming to know that this provides us so much work.
While this may seem like a small-scale business, it was once even smaller.
At first, we were just selling fish at campgrounds and farmers markets, just a couple 100 pounds, but it was the consumer demand and preference for this being wild caught.
Amanda says this came as a surprise at first.
And how treasured they are by everybody else in the nation.
The Kvichak Company sells the story of the salmon as much as the fish itself. The sisters say buyers take comfort in knowing the fish are harvested responsibly, in clean waters, and treated with lots of TLC.
Almost like you're exposing a secret, but in order to protect something or in order for people to really understand how valuable it is, you have to share it with them and educate them.
The fish are cleaned and filleted, vacuum packed, and frozen with not a moment to waste.
From net to this, less than 20 hours. Usually less than 12.
And not every fish makes the cut, so to speak.
These are number 2 fish. These all have bruises or cuts or seal bites.
The fish are set aside to be smoked in the winter down in Montana. And yes, that does create jobs in Montana, but it also provides a market for Alaska fishermen.
We have 973 pounds of reds that we brought here. I would rather see these smaller outfits do good, and they pay better, and they take better care of the fish.
The fishermen like that they have more control of their product, that every box has a number, and a name that can be traced back to them.
It's neat for them to know it's not just going into the barrel with everybody else's, that their effort is being appreciated on down the line.
And the company continues to sell new products, like the eggs or roe.
40 pounds.
This batch will go out on the next flight.
Fishermen down in Seattle and Portland are very excited about getting fresh sockeye roe. They're just real particular about how they want us to handle it and the color.
The key is to handle the roe gently.
They ask us to only send them ones that the skeins are intact, so all the eggs are still in their pouch.
No one said it would be easy to run such a big business on such a small scale on so little sleep.
I got a couple hours last night.
You're moving, you're constantly on the go, so the days go by real fast.
It won't be long before the season wraps up. And then the days of waiting for what the tide brings in will come to an end, and the next season begins again. Can't come soon enough. Well, coming up, innovation. It's all in the eye of the beholder. If you've always had running water and sewer service, this might not seem like a big deal. Why families in this Southwest Alaska community take nothing for granted. Also ahead, meet Nolan Clouda. You might call him the Johnny Appleseed of economic development here in Alaska. It was a business that started in a garage in Muldoon, but today it's headquartered in Palmer with an impressive multi-million-dollar contract from the Navy. As Shannon Ballard shows us, it's not the kind of manufacturing company that you'd expect to find here in Alaska.
Water gets blasted out there, it gets sucked up.
This technology is 15 years in the making.
It's more like a water vacuum with complete recycling capabilities.
It's called MCRIS, short for Mobile Cleaning Reclaim Recycle System, designed to clean flight decks on Navy aircraft carriers.
Sometimes people talk about us being like high-tech janitors, and that's kind of what we are. We're really good at cleaning up messes and in sophisticated environments.
Trivera CEO Hans Vogel is the man behind the idea. He wanted to create something that would keep flight decks from becoming slippery from oil and fuel spills, prevent particles from being sucked into aircraft engines, all while keeping the environment safe.
The additional challenge is this also has to be a robust enough product for the Navy, right? One of the most severe and dangerous environments on the planet to operate a piece of equipment. It's highly corrosive, and you've got 19-year-old sailors operating it, so there's a lot of considerations, not just in the cleaning technology, but ultimately how the machine's maintained and interacted with.
The company also has its own shop where they manufacture parts for themselves and other companies in the lower 48. Overall, they've created 30 high-paying jobs for skilled employees such as Navy veteran and engineer Matthew Haken.
When you're in the Navy, you don't necessarily think about the engineers and the people who help you do your job, but it's still important, you know, and now that I'm on the other side, I do realize that.
These machines are the first of their kind, costing close to $1 million a piece, and the Navy has ordered nearly 50. The mayor of Palmer says she's excited to see the manufacturing industry is thriving and adding diversity to the economy.
I'd be surprised if more than a handful of people knew that this was here, and really how big it is and what an impact it has not only on our state, our community, but on the nation.
Just one example that manufacturing can be done on a large scale in small town Alaska. Reporting for Frontiers, I'm Shannon Ballard.
It takes 8 weeks to assemble and test each machine, and the company hopes to eventually ship out 1 unit a month. Well, the University of Alaska Anchorage's Center for Economic Development tracks startups just like this one, and the director of the center, Nolan Clouda, joins us now. You know, when you look at a company like this one in Palmer, Triveris, can that be replicated with what we have here, or is this just kind of a one-off?
You know, what's really interesting, Rhonda, I think, is that a business like that, I wouldn't have expected it to make a lot of sense to be in Alaska, just how far we are away from markets and how expensive it is to operate. But I think what it shows us is that a really skilled entrepreneur, a really dedicated entrepreneur, can make things happen that we don't think are possible.
You know, and I don't think people realize the impact that startups have. And so we have some numbers that you've given us from the center that look look at startups in the economy. And we'll start off with companies that are a year old or less. What are we seeing?
Right. Well, Rhonda, we did some research on this and looked at businesses starting and how many jobs they created, and we found these are numbers from that actually apply right through the recession. That businesses will typically add 4,000 to 6,000 jobs a year. These are the new businesses being started to the economy, and for a state our size, that's a very significant number.
Yeah, when they talk about cuts in state government generating job losses, could almost make up for some of those.
Right.
And let's look at the 5-year companies, because I think you get a different picture there. Now, this is something I think that would surprise a lot of people, because we think big when we think of job creation and not necessarily small.
Yes, exactly. And so what this is about is that the new businesses starting are adding jobs to the economy. Other businesses in the economy that already exist might be adding or subtracting jobs. And so there's this big number of jobs created each year, big number of jobs lost each year. But if there's net growth in employment, it's usually the result of these young firms.
So did that soften the recession?
It probably did. I think if we didn't have a pipeline of new businesses starting in the economy, I think that job losses would have been much worse.
So can you tell us, what are some of the characteristics of Alaska startups? Are they different than other startups in the country?
Yes, well, it looks like Alaska has a very high rate of starting businesses. We rank usually 3rd or 4th out of all 50 states when it comes to the likelihood of a person starting a business. So Alaskans are very entrepreneurial. Our businesses, though, do tend to grow more slowly than the national average. We have it takes longer for businesses to get to a certain number of employees in a certain amount of time. And so we seem like we start businesses, but we don't grow them as fast as other places.
That's probably because we don't have the infrastructure. Now, let's look at some snapshots of Alaska entrepreneurs, and let's start out with the age. That's a surprise to me, because you have the stereotype of the 30-something high-techie that goes off on their own.
Yes, that's right. And these are Alaska numbers, but they are very similar for the nation as a whole. We do have this image of the young 20-something, 30-something tech founder who starts a business, and certainly those people are out there. But most entrepreneurs are a little bit older and a little bit more experienced.
55 or older.
That's right.
Under 35, just 6%.
Very small number of business owners are that young. That's right.
So let's look at women, because I guess that's a real bright spot.
Yes, this was something that surprised us, is that Alaska has the highest share of business owners that are female, that are women, of any state in the country, and not something that I expected to find, and not even really something that I know why it is that way, how to account for. But for whatever reason, Alaska does have the highest rate. Now, there are still many more businesses that are owned by men. Business ownership does skew very much toward males, but Alaska seems to have a smaller gap than the country as a whole.
I've talked to women, older women who have been entrepreneurs, and they often say that, well, Alaska is the kind of place that a woman can get that type of opportunity, because there's more competition for opportunities in the lower 48. What do you think about that? That women seem to be able to be freer to go beyond the stereotypes?
Well, it's an interesting thing, and I don't know exactly how to account for that. But I think that that Alaska has this culture of kind of just getting up and doing it yourself, right? And I think that probably men and women alike have that spirit of just getting it done. And I think that's what lends itself really well to entrepreneurship.
Well, let's look at some of the jobs that we have created by entrepreneurs. There's a long list here, but you see manufacturing way down at the bottom. And I guess tourism is a given, leisure and hospitality. So is there room to grow jobs in different sectors, you think?
I certainly do. I think that among technology types of startups or manufacturing businesses, there's the potential for them to scale in many cases, meaning that they can grow large, they can employ more people. And I think that factors that would enable that would be generally good for the economy as a whole. Tourism is a very big impetus for entrepreneurship as well, and so that's why you see that leisure and hospitality is so high. Tourism does support a number of many small family-owned businesses.
So let's look at the state as a whole. It's natural to assume that the large urban centers are probably going to have more job creation. In rural Alaska, you tend to see the mom and pop that actually starts another competition, a competing grocery store in their living room.
Yes.
with stuff bought from Costco.
Right.
But how hard is it for us to see some growth in rural Alaska?
Right. Well, what's very interesting there, we looked at the number of businesses on a per capita basis. How many businesses are there per number of people? And we found that in rural areas, especially in kind of western and Arctic Alaska, that the number of businesses per capita is very low, and that's a function of kind of economic distress in some of those areas, of low employment opportunities, of a limited cash economy. However, in some communities that could be thought of as rural, places that get a lot of annual visitation, for instance, Skagway has the largest number of businesses per capita of any part of Alaska, off the charts compared to other places. And then your urban centers have much higher number of businesses per capita than generally rural areas do.
So what can be done to keep these businesses from washing out? Because there is a high risk. I guess that's why we call it entrepreneurs, is they're taking a chance.
Right, there's always a risk in starting a business, and I think there always will be. But what can we do to make a more positive business environment? I think is a good question to ask. Businesses need workers. I think most business surveys will say that a shortage of workers or the cost of labor is a big thing that holds them back. And so, what can we do to improve that in our education system? What regulations get in the way of certain businesses? You have to look at sort of the overall environment of the business and what can be done to improve it.
All right, well, I want to thank you very much. Nolan Clowder, Director of the Center for Economic Development at UAA. Well, finally, it is no small feat to bring water and sewer to a community that's perched on the permafrost. EETCH is in southwest Alaska, about 50 miles from Bethel, home to about 360 people who used to haul honey buckets out to a sewage lagoon and collect rain and river ice for drinking water. It's taken about 5 years to get to this point where every household in EETCH can turn on the faucet and flush the toilet. The community has already seen many benefits, especially in health.
A flu goes around, it doesn't last as long because you can just flush it away and wash your hands and disinfect your home right there instead of having to boil water and get everything done.
Running water makes everything clean. You could mop, take showers, wash your kids in the tub.
Lots of free time now available. Well, the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium has overseen this project, which has a lot of partners as well as a lot of moving parts. New water and sewer lines had to be built above ground, upgrades to many of the homes in the older part of the community, and even a special heating system to keep the water from freezing. One other thing, a sewer lagoon had to be built during the transition from honey buckets to toilets, but plans are to close it for good sometime this spring. Another side benefit, the new water and sewer system will need maintenance, so that's created 4 new jobs in the community. Congratulations, EETCH. Oh, did you ever wonder how EETCH got its name? Well, Minnie Brown says it originally was called Kvichak, which means small or low-lying bluffs, but it was shortened to EETCH, which means eyes, perhaps because of an island downriver that is shaped like an eye. So now you know. And we now leave you with one thought about innovation and Alaska. Necessity has made it an important survival skill in our state, quite powerful when it's applied in other arenas. Well, we want to thank you for watching us, and we'll see you next week.